코스피 역대 최고치 경신, 부동산 가격 상승 랠리 지속. 언제쯤 버블이 꺼질까요? 모두 이런 생각들 해보셨을 겁니다. 오늘은 조 브라운 씨의 분석과 함께 왜 모든 자산의 가격이 오르는지, 왜 우리는 열심히 회사 다니며 돈 버는데 벼락거지가 되고 있는 건지 알아보겠습니다.
Look, today, prices are rising quickly. Whether you're looking at assets or goods, real estate or stocks, crypto or gold, it looks like everything is a bubble. But if everything is in a bubble, maybe nothing is. Maybe the real problem is in your measuring stick. Maybe the real problem lies with your denominator, your currency, the dollar.
한국의 원화도 마찬가지입니다. 달러에 연동되니까요.
The price of gold has recently broken out from a multi-month consolidation pattern and is currently at all-time highs, trading for $3,629 per ounce. Silver as well is hitting prices that it has only seen a few times in history at over $41 per ounce. Bitcoin as well is near its all-time high, trading at $112,000. The S&P 500 is at just under 6,500, and within the last couple of trading days has been playing with all-time highs. The Nasdaq is over 23,000, touching all-time highs as well, and the United States Case-Shiller Home Price Index is also at all-time highs. So we have hard assets like gold and silver. We have crypto like Bitcoin. We have the stock market, whether you're looking at high growth tech stocks, mega caps, or small caps, everything touching all-time highs. Even real estate. But guess what? It's not even just assets. Because if you look at the cost of rent across the United States, also at all-time highs. Or if you look at the cost of ground beef, it is also at all-time highs. Or if you look at the cost of college tuition, whether you're looking at public or private, or if you look at the cost of health insurance, it is also at all-time highs. Prices are higher now than they've ever been. So it's not just assets, it is the cost of life in general that is all going up, and nothing has ever been this expensive.
한국도 마찬가지입니다. 주식시장, 부동산, 생활물가 모두 사상 최고치입니다.
The point is, the question that you should always be asking yourself when you are trying to figure out if something is expensive is, compared to what? Are all the most expensive they have ever been? Then when you say compared to what, you can't compare them to each other because they all look like they're in a bubble. The thing you're comparing them all to there is the dollar. Now you might be thinking, well, if you pull up a chart of the dollar, it really hasn't done much. In fact, it's at the exact same level it was back in 2015. And you look at this chart of the dollar, you are comparing the dollar to other currencies around the world. That's what the DXY is, the dollar index. It's a dollar versus a basket of other fiat currencies, which means this chart looks pretty much exactly because if every government and central bank around the world is devaluing their own currency at around approximately the same rate, of course, you're not going to have that large of fluctuations in the value of one currency compared to another, which is why the DXY doesn't look anything
무슨 말이냐면 미국뿐 아니라 전 세계의 모든 나라가 다 돈을 풀어서 돈의 가치가 다 같이 떨어진 겁니다.
crazy. Ludwig von Mises was one of the fathers of Austrian economics, and he described something called a crack-up boom. He said, if once public opinion is convinced that the increase in the quantity of money will continue and never come to an end, and that consequently the prices of all commodities and services will not cease to rise, everybody becomes eager to buy as much as possible and to restrict his cash holding to a minimum size. For under these circumstances, the regular costs incurred by holding cash are increased by the losses caused by the progressive fall in purchasing power. In other words, any rational person will choose to get rid of dollars as fast and as soon as possible if they know the purchasing power of those dollars is going to continue declining. This is the phenomenon that we are seeing happen in America today.
미국뿐 아니라 전 세계에서도 이런 경향이 나타나고 있습니다.
Now, at this point, you may be wondering, is there any way that we can tell that this is actually going on? Maybe there is a bubble happening everywhere. And for this, I would like to show you the price of things priced in gold for a couple of reasons. Number one, when you look back over hundreds or even thousands of years of human history, the purchasing power of 1 ounce of gold stays relatively stable throughout time. In other words, the amount of stuff you can buy with 1 ounce of gold stays about the same, regardless of where you look in history or when you look in history. It is a much more stable measuring stick in order to look at prices. And so when you see something at all-time highs priced in gold, then that is a good indication that it might be expensive.
쉽게 말해, 금 가격 차트로 자산 가치를 보면 비교적 정확하게 볼 수 있다는 겁니다.
Okay, so right here you are looking at a chart of the S&P 500, except instead of being priced in dollars, it's priced in gold. Now you may be looking at this and thinking, okay, going back to before the year 1900, the value of the S&P 500 compared to the value of gold is elevated, but you're certainly not going to look at this and think, oh my gosh, this isn't a crazy bubble. Obviously, something like the early 90s, stocks were extremely cheap, but at a ratio of 1.79, while maybe historically elevated, it is certainly closer to a more normal average ratio. We don't see stocks priced in gold being in a bubble or necessarily cheap. This is a chart of the NASDAQ priced in gold. We get a similar end of the chart here. This is a chart of the Dow Jones Industrial Average priced in gold, which looks even more fairly valued. Definitely nowhere near bubble territory. Arguably not even expensive looking. They have a chart of electric power in the US, although it does end in 2021. So electricity prices priced in gold are more expensive now than they were a couple of years ago, but again, not close to all-time highs. You can even look at the price of the median home sale in the US since 1965, priced in both US dollars, which is the green line, or priced in gold, which is the red one. And see again, not only is this not near all-time highs, it's much closer to an all-time low.
이렇게 보니 대부분의 자산이 버블 상태라고 보기는 어렵네요.
So the question is, if the US dollar is losing purchasing power versus goods and assets, is there any reliable way to anticipate whether that will continue into the future? One lagging indicator you can look at is the M2 money supply. This is simply a chart put out by the Federal Reserve that shows the total supply of US dollars in the US financial system. Obviously, this chart usually goes up and to the right. After all the money printing that happened in 2020 and 2021, the growth took a brief hiatus, and the money supply actually declined for a short period of time. But it has begun climbing yet again. And if we zoom in on just the last few years, you can see that the money supply is now at a new all-time high, eclipsing the high that it hit in 2022, especially considering that the Federal Reserve is largely expected to begin cutting rates very soon. Given the fact that dollars are loaned into existence, that means lower interest rates are pressure on fueling the growth of the money supply. Lower interest rates are a signal to economic actors to borrow and spend because money is cheap, it's easy, and it's abundant. Which means if you are expecting everything to crash in terms of dollars, you would need a massive departure from what has been taking place with the US money supply for decades. You would need to expect that the US government was suddenly just going to stop borrowing and spending money. You would need to expect that policymakers would be okay with and would allow a deflationary death spiral that would rival or perhaps exceed the Great Depression to just happen again. And while I guess that's technically possible, I don't think that it's anywhere near the most likely outcome, which means I don't think we are in the midst of a bubble getting ready to pop. I think we are just seeing the gradual but consistent decline in purchasing power of the dollar across the board.
즉, 모든 자산 가격이 하락할 가능성은 별로 없어 보입니다.
And if you want to protect yourself from that, you have to be invested in those assets. You have to be diversified across asset classes, not just stocks, not just real estate, not just Bitcoin.